Good morning from Hopalong Hollow. This is Jerry, and we're in an unfamiliar room in the house today, and that would be the kitchen. It's a room that my husband shudders whenever I walk into it. That's because I don't do a whole lot of cooking. He's really the cook in this house. But today we're going to make something really simple, and it's something that will go really beautifully with our tea of the week. We're going to make scones, or scones, whichever pronunciation you prefer, and a little bit different than an American biscuit. These are English quick bread, and let's get busy. I don't do a lot of cooking because, number one, I don't have to. My husband is a marvelous cook and he prefers to do the cooking, so that is fine with me. But once in a while I like to make something special, and if it's a baking, I think that's a lot of fun. So the first time I ever made scones, I misread the recipe and I put in like 3 times the amount of salt I was supposed to, so they were not a success. But I think this time we're going to get it right. So as I do the recipe, I will put the ingredients on the screen for you. I am preheating the oven to 385 at this moment. That by putting 4 cups of flour through a sifter with the following ingredients: 2 teaspoons of sugar, granulated sugar, you want 2 heaping teaspoons of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of salt. You'll want to freeze your butter. You're going to use 1 stick of butter, which is a half a cup, and then shred it. Your dry ingredients are completely sifted and mixed together. We're going to add the shredded frozen butter, which was 1/2 cup. And it's shredded in order to help you mix it in just a little bit better, rather than using cubes of butter. If you're doing this by hand, which I am. My husband would be using a food processor, but if I'm going to bake, which I so seldom do, I just want to do it the old-fashioned way. It's so funny because my husband really doesn't like when I cook. It's because I'm not a very good cook, and that's just a fact. I don't know. I used to love to bake and cook when I was younger, like a teenager. And when my children were little, I loved to cook and bake. Now, I'd much rather do other things than cooking and baking, since I have a fantastic chef in the family. The fact of the matter is, my father was a professional chef. But you know, it's a shame that when we're young, we don't appreciate that sort of thing. I could have gotten a lot of information from my dad if I'd have been interested at the time. Unfortunately, he passed away before I decided that he had a lot of knowledge to impart when it came to cooking. Now, as you can see, I am just squeezing the mixture together, very lightly turning it. I actually used to do a lot of canning, bread baking. I did all those things when my children were small. I made cheese. I did all those things, but I think now I'd much rather go out and garden. So I will grow the vegetables, and I can make a really great salad. So at least I can tell my husband, hey, I not only can make a salad, but I can grow one. Actually, he's a pretty good sport about it. If I could just get him to cook a couple of his recipes on YouTube. You want to make a nice little pit here in the middle of your dry ingredients. And we're going to pour in that 2 cups of milk. Wow, that's a lot of milk. And you're going to turn it and mix it. Until it's completely mixed, but not over mixed. Sprinkle your surface with flour. I've got it all patted out here and ready to roll. I'm not rolling this very thick. About 3/4 of an inch. Now, using a biscuit cutter or a glass, I've got this lowly little wooden biscuit cutter. I've also got this incredibly old biscuit cutter, but it would make huge scones, so I'm not going to use this one. This one makes beautiful rounded top scones. Of course, just as I say that, it gets stuck in there. I got nearly a dozen scones out of this batch, and I could probably make a lot more. They might be a little bit gritty if I do, but I am going to use all of this. I like these nice round tops. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? It's because of this wonderful biscuit cutter here. Step is to crack an egg and add about a tablespoon of milk. Oops, looks like we have an eggshell in there. Then we're going to whisk that up and brush the egg mixture on top of the scones. Golden brown on the top, and I can't wait to see what they taste like. With the finished product, beautifully golden brown, hot from the oven. I made 2 batches, a very large batch, and then with the leftover dough I made a smaller scone. But I think they look just perfect. And you know what? They taste really good. I am very pleased with myself. I might even get my husband to eat one of these, which would be amazing. But you could serve these straight out of the oven with butter and jam. But the purpose for these is to serve with our tea today that we're having, and serve them with clotted cream. I made the clotted cream yesterday because it's a very long process, but it's so easy. So let me show you how I did that. I am really pleased with these. There's nothing tastier to serve with your fresh, warm scones than jam and clotted cream. But clotted cream is something that we're really not that familiar with in the US. And it's really more of a European thing, and in English in particular. When you hear the word clotted, you think of milk that was left in the barn for just a little bit too long, but trust me, it's something very, very different. I'm going to read the definition of clotted cream from my little English book of teas, and it says that it's believed that it was the Phoenicians in search of tin who first brought clotted cream to Cornwall and thence to Devon. The clotted cream from Cornwall varies from the rich yellow cream of Devon in that it has a delicious buttery yellow crust on top, and its consistency is thicker. It's usually made with whole cream, whereas the Devonshire variety is made with creamy milk. A bowl of settled cream is put into a pan of hot water before being scalded. The pan is then removed from the heat and let stand for at least 24 hours in a cool place. The crusty cream will have settled on the top of the pan and can be easily removed with a large slotted spoon. Well, we're going to make ours a little bit differently today using a crock pot. You could also use a slow cooker, or you can even do it in the oven. Now, it turns out differently no matter how you do it. So we're going to start out with fresh, this is ultra pasteurized cream. They actually recommend that you use unpasteurized cream, but I cannot find any here where we are, so we're going to try it out with this. Throughout this video, I will refer to this as Cornish cream, clotted cream, and Devonshire cream, just to be fair to everybody. I actually prefer the term Cornish cream, so that's basically what I'll use. Now I'm going to put in about 2 cups of milk, 2 or 3 cups of milk, right into my crock pot. And then I'm going to put it on the pot and turn it on warm. And I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to cover it with a cloth to keep the condensation away. So I'm just going to cover it with a cloth. We're going to put on the lid, and we're going to leave it cooking on warm for anywhere from 9 to 12 hours. It's that simple. You can also do this in your oven, and that's a little bit different. You would leave your oven on 170 to 180, put it in a casserole dish, pour your cream in a casserole dish, put it in the oven for about 12 hours, and then take it out. You'll refrigerate it for as many hours as that, another 12 hours, and when you're done, you have a nice thick layer of hopefully at least 1 inch of nice heavy clotted cream. This 3 cups of cream has been cooking for approximately 6 hours in the crock pot on warm. You can see that it's getting a nice golden crust on the top, and that is what you want. If that gets any darker than this, I'm going to remove it from the heat, however, and take the crock pot off of the heat, let it cool off, and then I will put it in the refrigerator for about 9 to 12 hours. And then it'll be ready. This container has cooled off, and now this cream is ready to go into the refrigerator for several hours. It's got a crusty yellow topping, but if you will notice, it's don't really want to jiggle this too much, but you'll see that, you see how that's just wiggling around like that? Don't worry about it. It's actually going to really change in the next several hours in the refrigerator. You'll see. 10 hours, we've taken the Cornish cream out of the fridge, and it's firmed up quite a bit, but you'll notice there's still some cream, loose cream in there, and that's perfectly normal. And so what you want to do with that loose cream is just drain it, and you're going to be able to reuse that in whatever else you choose. Really quite a bit left. Now I used ultra pasteurized cream. They say it's better. You get a lot more clotted cream if you don't use pasteurized, but that's all that I could find here. But we still have quite a bit of lovely clotted cream left. Roll back the top here. You'll see that beautiful, beautiful cream. And you just cannot believe the taste of this. Now, if I had been able to use unpasteurized milk, I probably would have gotten a thicker head of cream. Perhaps also if I'd done this in the oven. But this was my first time with it, and I think it's really beautiful. Now this crusty top, you want to keep that too, and you want to mix that in with your... Look at that. That's like... it's so delicious. You just want to put this in a crock. Look at that. It's like a mixture of ice cream, cream cheese, and butter. And you want to save even that yellow top, because that part is really good too. So here you can see the skimmed buttermilk, which was left below the surface of that crusty top of the Cornish cream. And this can be put to good use, because I mean this is still absolutely delicious. So use it in your soups or your sauces, but the most important thing is to use it to make your scones. So put that aside until it's time to bake your scones. Mix that crust in together to make this more of a smooth cream, but I really like the little bits and pieces of just a slight little crunch. Mixed in with that creamy smoothness. Oh, and you just don't want any of this. You don't want any of this to go to waste, because it is so good. Now, if it's a little bit too chunky for you, you can add a little extra cream, mix it in there. But I like it thick like this. It's going to be great with our scones and our tea with Charles Dickens today. So let's go set the table for tea. Although I am an old man, night is generally my time for walking. In the summer, I often leave home early in the morning and roam about fields and lanes all day, or even escape for days or weeks together. But saving in the country, I seldom go out until after dark, though, heaven be thanked, I love its light and feel the cheerfulness it sheds upon the earth as much as any living creature. Sounds like something out of a Charles Dickens novel. And that's because it is. The Old Curiosity Shop was Charles Dickens' fourth novel. Old Curiosity Shop was published in installments in a periodical called Mr. Humphrey's Clock between 1840 and 1841. Of course, these installments were absolutely popular throughout Britain, but also in the USA and Canada. And it's no wonder, because Charles Dickens was the master of creating odd, eccentric characters, monstrous villains, and sympathetic, usually poverty-stricken victims. And there's no doubt that this book is full of all of the above. The main villains in this story were Mr. and Mrs. Quilp, and the victim was Nell. These books were so popular, these stories were so popular that when the last installment came out, it is rumored that people were waiting on the docks in New York for those papers to come out because they wanted to know if Nell died. But if you want to know if Nell died, you need to read The Old Curiosity Shop, if you haven't already. But what does that have to do with today's tea? I run across these rather peculiar cups in antique stores. I saw them a lot and over the years, and I really did not know what they were. But when I found out what they were and what they represented, then I became very interested in them. You'll notice that the graphics are a little bit odd. So here's an old Toby cup with a pipe. Here's a teapot. Well, after a little research, I found out what these are. This was tableware called the Old Curiosity Shop, and now it all made sense. In fact, this is Mr. Humphrey's Clock, that periodical in which the installments for the Old Curiosity Shop stories came out of. And these were made in America in the 1950s. They're not old. Well, I guess 1950s, I guess that's pretty old these days. But they're just really beautiful if you love green. It's a dark, dark green. And they were sold in supermarkets, and they were sold in catalogs. And sometimes they were used as promotional pieces for selling laundry soap and things like that. But I really love these beautiful graphics. This is a platter. There's also a dinner plate. But you can just see Old England all over these plates. So when I say that we're having tea with Charles Dickens, we're having tea with Charles Dickens and the Old Curiosity Shop today. Bowls, creamers, salt and pepper shakers, dessert bowls, and platters can all be found still for this wonderful old 1950s old curiosity shop tableware. I love it. I love green, and I just love it because it has that just wonderful old nostalgia to it. Fantastic with pewter and Britannia-ware. And our tea of the week is Harney & Sons Tower of London Blend. And I do believe that if Mr. Quilp had not gotten so greedy that he would have drowned in the river with all his stolen goods, he would have ended up in the Tower of London. This is a really good tea. This is one I absolutely recommend that you buy. It is really, really delicious, fresh black tea blend. Let me tell you, it's from, of course, Harney & Sons Historic Royal Palaces. Love these gorgeous tins. Harney & Sons Tower of London Blend is a fresh black tea. It's Chinese black tea stirred with pieces of dried stone fruit and then finished with oil of bergamot and honey. This blend is reminiscent of Elizabethan preserves, flavorful and tempting. I absolutely think this is a good one. It's worth your money. So give this one a try. Harney & Sons Tower of London Blend from Historic Royal Palaces. Today's teapot, because it is so similar to the pot on the saucer of the old curiosity shop tableware. Very, very similar. Not only that, it's from a same era. This pot is from 1830. It was made by Dixon & Sons, and this is Britannia-ware. This had a leak in it, and I was able to fix it. And I bet that this has not had tea in it for over 100 years. So we're going to be the first ones to enjoy the tea out of this pot since it was repaired. Oh, by the way, we're using this beautiful little 1917 tea strainer. Very ornate, very pretty, with a little wooden handle, silver, and a little screen there to capture the tea leaves. We have extra guests today, as you can see, and they are also having their tea with Britannia-ware. And their Britannia-ware is from the early 1900s. I believe we'll pour some tea for our little guest as well. So it's time to enjoy our scones, and the proper way to open your scone is just to open it up with your hands. Ooh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Now, whether you put your jam on first or your Cornish cream on first, doesn't really matter. Do whatever you like. Every region has its own way of doing things. It just enjoy it, whatever you do. And in this case, I'm using raspberry jam. I think I'm going to put my jam on first. Now, I'll tell you, these are pretty. If you're on a diet, these aren't exactly the sort of thing you want to eat. But you know what? Make a treat of this once in a while. I normally don't even eat much bread. But, I mean, once in a while, you can treat yourself to something super delicious like this. Because I'm telling you, really, you're just going to love your scone. Now, there is no need to be stingy with the Cornish cream, the Clotted cream, the Devonshire cream, because we have plenty of it, and you just want a great big wallop of it. Like, I mean, seriously, like a lot. You want a mouthful of this stuff because it is so good. So I just want you to help yourself and really enjoy it. because this is something you eat every day. So you might as well really, really enjoy it. That is so good. When I was making the scones, I forgot to mention the difference between a biscuit and a scone. As you notice, the ingredients are very, very similar to an American biscuit, but the taste is completely different. Whereas a biscuit is light and fluffy and airy, a scone is really very different. It's dense, it's got a lot of texture, and it's got a lot of substance to it. I really prefer the taste of a scone. You know, this really is an experience you should try. It's a beautiful afternoon tea indulgence, and I really highly recommend that you learn how to make clotted cream and scones. Now, you know, it was really interesting last time. We had quite a few comments on the rule, whatever it is, of whether or not you pour your cream in your tea before or after. And so we had lots of responses on that. But the most interesting one, I thought, was someone mentioned that the lower classes, the poorer people that couldn't afford really good china, they poured their cream or their milk in their cup to cool their cup down before they poured the hot tea in order to avoid cracking the cup because they couldn't afford to replace them. And then the higher classes of people who could afford good china and who could replace it at any time, they poured their milk or their cream in after they poured their tea. But I'm an American and I do not drink cream in my tea, so it really doesn't matter. I just like sweetener, and I really do love this tea. I will highly recommend this tea. It has a very fruity taste to it, but it's got a strong black tea flavor. So I can really taste the honey, I can taste the fruit pulp, and I do recommend this. So this is Harney and Sons. Thank you again for joining us at our afternoon tea. And this is Jerry from Hopalong Hollow and a couple of our friends. So thank you once again, and we will see you next time. Bye.